They were not called for this. Cole Denning and Jordan McKnight were on a job call on a Thursday afternoon in Ames, Iowa. Tow truck operators. That is what they do. They show up when your car breaks down, when you have an accident, when you're stuck on the shoulder of a highway with your hazard lights blinking. They have the equipment and the training and the experience for that kind of problem. They were not called for a kitten. But a kitten is what they found, and what happened next in a drive-through coffee lane in the middle of a heat advisory took 15 minutes and a disassembled car and the kind of improvised teamwork that only happens when two people decide simultaneously and without discussion that they are simply not going to leave. Her name is Fika. Fika is the Swedish word for a purposeful break, the kind you take for coffee or tea, deliberately, not just as an interruption to the day, but as a moment with intention. Someone gave her that name later, whence she was safe, and the name is perfect in a way that could not have been planned. She was found at a coffee shop. She is going home with the man who helped free her. She is someone's intentional break from a life that did not have room for her yet. But we are getting ahead of ourselves. Subscribe right now before this story gets to where it is going. We post every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, and this one is worth being here for from the beginning. The drive-thru at Scooter's Coffee in Ames, Iowa works the way drive-thrus are supposed to work. You pull in, place your order, move forward, collect your coffee, and pull out. The whole thing takes a few minutes. On a Thursday afternoon in August, during a heat advisory that had pushed temperatures high enough to make even a short wait uncomfortable, a woman named Kepler had done exactly that. She pulled in, she placed her order, she moved forward, and then she heard a sound that did not belong. It was coming from inside her car, not from the interior, not from the vents, from somewhere in the front end. A small, repetitive, desperate sound, the unmistakable sound of a kitten in distress. She did not drive away. She got out. Kepler checked under the hood as best she could. She could not see anything, but the sound continued, and it was not stopping, and something was clearly wrong. She called the Ames Animal Shelter. An animal services officer named Kathy Pike responded. Pike is the kind of person who shows up when you call the animal shelter, someone who has seen a lot and is not easily rattled, someone whose entire job is to assess a situation calmly and figure out what to do. She assessed the situation. She went underneath the Honda and tried to reach the kitten. She could not. The kitten, they still could not see her, but they could hear her, was panting. In a heat advisory, in a confined metal space, inside a car that had been sitting in a drive-through lane on a hot afternoon, a small animal was panting and could not get out. Subscribe if you are still here. This story is about to turn. Central Iowa Towing and Recovery got the call. Cole Denning and Jordan McKnight arrived at Scooter's Coffee with the truck, the equipment, and no particular expectation of what they were walking into. This was not a standard job. There is no line in a tow operator's manual for extracting a trapped kitten from a Honda grill during a heat advisory at a drive-through coffee lane. But there are people who, when they encounter a problem that is not in the manual, simply start thinking about the problem. Cole and Jordan looked at the car. They looked at where the sound was coming from. They talked to each other.
Jordan McKnight later described what they worked out. They came to the conclusion, together, that the only possible way to get the kitten out was to disassemble the whole front clip of the car, the hood panels, the headlight housing, the entire front fascia, essentially, every piece of trim and bodywork that protected the mechanical guts of the engine compartment from the outside world. It is the kind of decision that sounds straightforward in a sentence, but is actually a substantial commitment. Disassembling the front clip of a modern car is not like popping a hood latch. It involves tools. It involves knowledge of how the panels connect. It involves doing the work carefully enough that everything can go back together again when you are finished. And it involves doing all of that in a drive-through lane in the heat with a panting kitten on the other side of the work while the coffee shop's afternoon rush continues somewhere nearby. They raised the Honda. They started removing panels. They worked around the hood. They worked around the headlights. They took apart the front of the car methodically and carefully, piece by piece, until there was enough space to reach inside. Kathy Pike, the animal services officer who had been there since the beginning, described the moment to the Washington Post in a way that gets at what it actually felt like. Everybody was like, "We are going to do what we can for this animal, and we are all going to work together and get it done." That is what happened. 15 minutes from the time they started disassembling to the time they reached inside and pulled the kitten out. 15 minutes for a problem that had no manual, no precedent, no training that directly applied. Just two tow truck operators with tools and the willingness to use them for something they were not technically called to do. The kitten was panting when they found her. She was small and she was frightened, and she had been in a confined hot space long enough that fear and heat had taken most of what she had. But she was alive. She was retrieved. She was taken for care. The Honda was put back together. Kepler drove away. And then something happened that nobody had specifically planned for either. Jordan McKnight, the tow operator who had helped dismantle the car and reach inside and pulled the kitten to safety, looked at the animal he had just spent 15 minutes fighting for. He decided he was not done. Once the kitten is spayed, she is going home with Jordan. Someone at the Ames animal shelter named her Fika, a purposeful coffee break, a moment with intention. Found at a coffee shop, rescued by people who stopped what they were doing to do something else entirely. Going home with the man who helped dismantle a car to get her out of it. That is the thing about accidental heroes. They do not plan to be in the story. They do not show up expecting to be the person who does the remarkable thing. Cole Denning and Jordan McKnight showed up to tow a car and instead spent 15 minutes carefully, precisely dismantling one to reach a panting kitten behind the grill. Kathy Pike, the animal services officer who had been there since the beginning, stood there until there was nothing left to do except watch a small animal get carried to safety. Kepler stopped in a drive-thru for coffee and did not drive away when she heard a sound that did not belong. None of them were called for this. All of them showed up anyway. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, share it. Every share is how these stories reach the people who need them. Subscribe for a new rescue story every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. We will be back Monday, and we will have another one. Take care of yourself.